Hi, I'm Marianne Grady Flores, and I'm here with Carmen Trotta. Tonight is August 9th, Nagasaki Day, and we're in South Georgia. Carmen is one of the Kings Bay Plowshares 7 co-defendants. Carmen, tell us the justification for your disarmament action.
So I think for most of us in the community, we understand our act to be not so much an act of civil disobedience, but an act of civil resistance. We understand that it was we who were upholding the law. We are at the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Most Americans know about the decimation of two cities. You would wish that they might be a little more remorseful about it. But what most Americans don't know is that prior to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the United States bombed 67 cities in Japan. In every instance, they sought to create a firestorm in Japan. This was recognized at the time as a war crime. So Curtis LeMay has basically admitted that the United States committed serial war crimes in the bombing campaign in Japan. It was not even merely there. The fact is that no one bombed more cities than the United States and Britain. And for that reason, at the Nuremberg tribunals, no one was charged with having bombed cities. So they sort of retracted that war crime for the time being. And it is perhaps the case that in what was the total war of the Second World War, that one would want to make an exception and say this is an aberration. But we then went on in 1953 to the war in Korea. And in Korea, General MacArthur commanded that we bomb every village, city, I can't remember the exact quote, in North Korea. So we ended up bombing again 54 cities in North Korea. We destroyed 85% of the buildings in North Korea. These are war crimes for which the United States continues to this day to absolve itself from. I'm not talking about the past. I'm talking about the war crimes of torture and the like, that we continue to absolve ourselves from them. And one of the more important things that the Kings Bay 7 did when they went onto the base is that we had with us an indictment. And we were, in fact, saying that it was we who were upholding the law. And so we brought this into the courtroom. But what we've come to find out, particularly through Francis Boyle and our other lawyers, is that over the past 40 years, the United States has really totally withdrawn from treaty law. And this comes in at least seeming violation of Article 6 of the Constitution, where it says that treaty law is the supreme law of the land and is to be abided by in every court in every state of the country. And yet an international law defense at this point is never accepted in a federal court. And yet we want to maintain, let me say also, it is also international law has also been incorporated into the Constitution. It's also been incorporated into the teaching of the Catholic Church. And so in Gaudium et Spes, right, in the Vatican II document, there are a whole series of quotes that are based upon the upholding of international law. Among them, it says very clearly that the bombing of cities, their vast areas and their populations, is a crime against God and man, and merits unequivocal condemnation. So these are some of the elements that got us there, and we don't want to give up those truths, and we refuse to give up international law.
Beautiful. That's wonderful. And do you have any other thoughts that you want to share at this time? Anything else?
Yeah, well, as people may very well know, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists is talking about it being 2 minutes to midnight. We've never been closer to nuclear war than we are right now. There was an equal period in 1947 at the height of the Cold War when we were at about the same level. If people would think of, I think people are really not well schooled in the various things going on regarding nuclear weapons. So recently, there was a military exchange between India and Pakistan. India bombed Pakistan. The Pakistani Air Force goes back against India. These are both nuclear-armed countries. How does it, if they were to have an exchange, and they both have, I think, about 200 nuclear weapons each. If they'd have had an exchange of 100 weapons, it would have a serious effect on the environment. It would provoke famine in various parts of the world. How dare they? How dare India and Pakistan jeopardize the fate of other places on the world and even the whole world, the economy of the whole world? How dare they? Well, you can turn that question right back around to the United States and Russia, because now you have the two countries who make up 93% of the nuclear arsenal. And the United States has seemingly deliberately kicked off a new Cold War. And again, it is something not well known to the American people, but in terms of the quote, building up of NATO, as we have surrounded Russia with new NATO states that we've created. And in a number of those NATO states, we are putting missile defense systems. And the Russians do not know. They have every reason to believe that those missiles are not merely there to shoot down other missiles. Those missiles could be nuclear armed. The Russians have no reason to think otherwise. So the enormous pressure that we are putting on Russia right now, really the fact that, it's supposed to be the commander-in-chief who has discretion over the use of the nuclear weapon, and at this point, it's Donald Trump.
Yes.
And so this itself is extraordinarily frightening.
Yes.
Another aspect of what's going on presently, Hans Christensen, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, he put out a report a while ago saying that, listen, we've been upgrading these nuclear weapons. And 10 years ago, 20% of the nuclear weapons shot by the Trident submarine could hit hard targets, very narrow focus, hitting hard targets, which would mean hitting nuclear weapons in Russia. He says today, however, it's 100%. It's 100%. So we've managed to, so this is itself a violation of what by law we are supposed to be doing. Because according to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, we are supposed to be tapering down nuclear weapons to nothing and putting them under international control. And the United States at this point, we've withdrawn from the INF Treaty. We are about to draw from the START II Treaty. There seems to be no question in my mind, being that we are thinking now of taking $1.7 trillion over the next 30 years and refurbishing our entire nuclear system. This is a grotesque violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So I would say that we've basically pulled out of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, really. And thank God there is a new treaty behind it. That the nations of the NATO, the United States, when they actually, the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So during the process for the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the United States, via its NATO countries, stages a walkout. And but so many countries in the world have now embraced that treaty. Even in some of the NATOs, there are 4 or 5 NATO states, I'm not sure, that have themselves have American nuclear weapons based in Europe, another violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. But in those states, in Germany, in Italy, in the Netherlands, and I'm trying to remember the name. No. In any case, research has been done in excess of 60% of the population in all of those countries does not want the nuclear weapons in those states. They're being imposed, they're having them imposed upon them by the United States. So it is an extraordinarily delicate time in terms of nuclear history, and I don't think people are sufficiently aware of that. I mean, down here in court, the other day, one of the reasons that we were charged, we're told, with these 3 felonies, is that we had perhaps endangered the lives of people on the base. Now, the fact is that they were told by one of the PR person on the base that actually nothing happened, nobody was threatened, but they hadn't thought. The courts think not at all of the city of the town of St. Mary's and the towns around it. So anyone living on that base in the event of a nuclear exchange between the United States and Russia, that base is going to be hit. And the damage will be vastly worse than what had happened to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yes. And so really the compelling interest of the court ought to be to protect the earth and those people. So they have jeopardized, in fact, they've jeopardized really all of Georgia, having that base there, having allowed that base to be there.
That's chilling to think about. Thank you. Do you have any thoughts to share about the action itself? What was it like for you to go on the base?
Something done in fear and trembling, really. And the will to do it was really predicated on over a year of a series of meetings with the other co-defendants, in which basically we were reading the scripture and reading the gospels, sharing about them, and gaining some sense of being secure that this was the right thing to do.
Yes. Thank you. So we invite our viewers to go to the website, which is Kings Bay Plowshares 7, the digit 7.org. And right there on the front page of the website, you'll see a link. If you go to the legal pages, you can see the links for the oral arguments that we heard some of in court just 2 days ago on August 7th. All right, thank you.